Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. I was surprised last night, pleasantly surprised, given how poor the Democratic National Convention was and given how Democrats are the party of Hollywood and the so-called creative types. I figured the RNC wouldn't look that much different. But the truth is, the team behind the Republican National Convention here on Capitol Hill and between the Trump 2020 campaign out in Virginia, well, they did an amazing job. The production quality, the flow, the tone, the logic, the ethos, the pathos. It was almost totally pitch perfect last night, and that's just day one. I'll be around here this evening for America's Voice to help out with some of the coverage of tonight's RNC, but I want to take a moment to congratulate those involved thus far, particularly because they freaked out the establishment media. It was self-evident in the faces of Wolf Blitzer and Dana Bash and other establishment talking heads. They knew that last night was a win for the Republican Party, and they hated it. It reminded me of some of the best moments from November the 9th and 10th and 11th of 2016. Let's remember.
How about more humor to help with any of that post-election stress? Here you go.
I had the weirdest dream last night. Remember that guy who used to host The Apprentice? I dreamed we elected him president.
The big story is that America woke up this morning and was like,
did I do that?
If this morning you finally woke up from a coma, well, you might want to go back.
What we did was the Democratic equivalent of installing an above-ground pool. Even if we're lucky and it doesn't seep into our foundations, the neighbors will never look at us the same way again.
We put our 8-month-old son to bed, and I was holding him, and I said to him, when you wake up tomorrow morning, we might have our first female president. And then when we came home around midnight, I went into his room, shook his crib until he woke up, and screamed, "We have to get out of here!"
It'll never get old, but it may well get repeated. As we mentioned yesterday, the Democratic Party saw no poll bump after their convention, and why would they have? It looked like an elementary school project gone wrong. I kind of wanted to give them a little pat on the head, even one of their little participation trophies. And I told you yesterday the numbers would bear it out. The Hill reported this morning that the opening night for the Republicans drew a whopping 6 times more than the Democrats' first night on the C-SPAN live stream. The Democrats had 77,000 people watching on their first night. The Republicans, 466,000 and counting. 466,000, and that's just on one C-SPAN stream. We'll get more numbers as they come out from the other networks today. And speaking of those networks, if the numbers are lower, you've got to look to why CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox News cut away from the live speeches. People were tuning in to hear the speakers, not to hear Dana Bash or Karl Rove opine on things they both got wrong in 2016. Well, Tuesday night will feature Eric Trump, Melania Trump, Senator Rand Paul, Nick Sandmann, and more. Of course, the president will make further appearances tonight as he did last night. Maybe that's why the ratings were so good. He is, of course, the ratings king, and much to the media's chagrin. A CNN opinion writer called Frida Gaitis called last night a Saturday Night Live parody. She wrote, quote, "As images of the Statue of Liberty and Trump in action flashed across the screen, the narrator, John Voight, described Trump as a man who works tirelessly for you and a party that is embracing the undeniable greatness of diversity. Cue the laugh track," end quote. She added, open quotes again, "The charge that the Democrats are all becoming socialists clashes with the reality that primary voters chose the centrist Biden, who then picked a centrist running mate in Kamala Harris. Centrist. Kamala Harris. Centrist." Here's what Kamala Harris had to say about the idea of her being called a centrist.
General and not Mr. Cooley. Well, I know that I read that at the Republican convention, he called me a radical. So I guess that's one difference between us. And yeah, I am a radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously.
Right.
Some centrist. We're not really told why. We should listen to Frida Gaitis either. I've never heard of her, and she has a paltry social media following. She doesn't appear to have done a real job a single day of her life, but there you go. That's the sort of quality we've come to expect from the media. And another thing they were really, really not happy about was President Trump leaning into his response to the coronavirus pandemic. Let's remind ourselves.
Please.
I'm a detention deputy at the Kern County Sheriff's Department out in California.
Great.
And I also contracted COVID into March and recovered from that also.
How long was your problem?
I was sick about 10 days, really bad. I got everything besides a cough, but recovered. I was off work for a month and a half, and I work in our local county jails.
Did they do anything specifically to help you recover?
They gave me Z-Paks medication, cough syrup.
Okay, and I won't even ask you about the hydroxychloroquine because it's a shame what they've done to that one, but I took it. I took the Z-Pak also, and zinc. I want to thank you all very much. It's an honor to have you in the White House. You're fantastic people, and the people you represent an incredible group of people, and we love you all.
The hydroxychloroquine question is still a big one in particular, especially because of some of the latest developments that are breaking live about the latest blood plasma, with the FDA now running away from their own emergency use authorization issued just this past weekend. On the show today, we have Dr. Harvey Risch, Professor of Epidemiology at Yale's School of Public Health and School of Medicine. I'm going to ask Dr. Risch why. Amongst everything else we're seeing out there, the administration is still struggling to make the case for hydroxychloroquine, and what his recommendations are for the administration, given that, in Trump's words, it's a shame what they've done to that one. We'll also get the latest from Natalie Winters on the so-called centrist or moderate Kamala Harris and how she used a fake Chinese name to campaign in an election where she wanted to get Chinese American votes. A fake Chinese name. I'm looking forward to this one. After the break, we'll be joined by Dr. Harvey Risch. Stay tuned. This is the National Pulse, and we'll be right back.